Our next speaker is a scholar and author who specializes in global terrorism, counterterrorism, U.S. foreign policy, and international conflict management. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Ivan Sascha Sheehan, Executive Director of the School of Public and International Affairs of the University of Baltimore.
Thank you all for that wonderful introduction, and what an act to follow. What an extraordinary performance just a moment ago. Let me extend my gratitude to the California Society for Democracy in Iran and the Iranian American community of Northern California for hosting this most timely forum. And what an honor it is to join these distinguished panelists at this very important moment in history. Ladies and gentlemen, the world stands at a crossroads, and the cause of freedom in Iran hangs precariously in the balance. For more than 4 decades, global powers have borne witness to the Islamic Republic of Iran's terrorism and repression, belligerence and hostilities. We've witnessed human rights abuses and hostage takings and proxy violence. We've seen arms shipments and the export of fundamentalism. And in recent months, we've watched as the regime has arrested and detained thousands upon thousands of protesters. But we've also seen courageous acts of resistance by the Iranian people. The regime and all that it has come to represent is finally being exposed for the world to see. But now the world has a choice to make. Will we support the aspirations of the Iranian people for a more peaceful and liberal and democratic future? Or will we continue to appease the murderous mullahs in Tehran? Let me be absolutely clear. I am proud to stand with the Iranian people in their quest for freedom and democracy in Iran. As I stand before you today, there are many reasons for the world to be concerned with Tehran's violent arc of influence. But nothing compares to the horrors experienced by the Iranian people themselves at the hands of their own rulers. This summer, I had the great privilege, along with some of the speakers who you've heard from tonight, of joining a bipartisan delegation of senior U.S. officials who embarked on a fact-finding mission at Ashraf 3, the MEK's new home in Albania. Our delegation included 4-star generals, Democrats and Republicans, independents, liberals and conservatives, foreign policy experts, sitting members of Congress, former cabinet members, ambassadors, intelligence experts, military officers, governors, academics, and human rights advocates. Joining us in Tehran were more than 350 dignitaries from 47 countries. During our trip, we gathered firsthand insights about the principal opposition to clerical rule. And we concluded what scholars have long understood, but Washington has been reluctant to acknowledge. And that is that the Ayatollahs are not a permanent fixture of the Middle East landscape. Iran fears its people more than anything else, and the regime in Tehran is more vulnerable than ever before. What our delegation witnessed was truly extraordinary and deeply promising. We saw with our own eyes a cohesive, organized political opposition movement with a long history of struggle against fundamentalism and dictatorship, guided by a gifted female leadership with a well-defined political platform and an intricate network of passionate supporters both inside Iran and around the world. It was like looking into Iran's democratic and pluralistic future. During our visit with residents of Ashraf 3, we encountered evidence both of horrific acts of tyranny by the regime, but also valiant acts of resistance by the people of Iran. Our observations are more important than ever before in history. For decades, Washington has regrettably ignored the most vital aspect of an effective Iran policy, and that is the Iranian people themselves. During our visit, we were given unfettered access to the camp's facilities and its residents. I want to share one brief story with you this evening that exemplifies what we saw during our 5-day stay. After a long day of speeches and panel discussions and media appearances, the members of our delegation were invited to a dinner that was to be hosted by the young women at Ashraf 3. We had no idea what to expect. But the women we encountered that evening were gracious and intelligent. They were cosmopolitan and independent. They were confident and deeply, deeply committed. The women we encountered told stories of the unspeakable horrors that they and their families had encountered at the hands of the Ayatollahs. They spoke of the regime's torture and executions, human rights abuses and violence. But these women didn't want our pity. They wanted our solidarity. We witnessed their bravery and their courage and their resilience and their abiding commitment to the cause of freedom in Iran. I will never forget that night, and I know that those Americans who attended that evening will never forget it as well. They left us all inspired and humbled. Following our trip, I went to the American delegation and I told them that I want to write a book about what I saw during my 5-day stay with the opposition. The leaders of the American delegation sat me down, looked me in the eye, and they said, "You need to write a book about what we all saw during our stay with the Iranian opposition." Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I am proud to report that this book, titled Iran's Resurgent Resistance, was just published by the Iran Policy Committee. The book has already received advance praise from senior leaders in the U.S. intelligence community and the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Defense and the Department of State. I am immensely grateful to Senator Lieberman and Senator Torricelli and Ambassador Joseph and Colonel Martin and Ambassador Bloomfield for their invaluable contributions to this timely book. I hope that all of you sitting in this room tonight and those of you watching around the world will have an opportunity to read it. But even more importantly, I hope that the leaders in the White House and the U.S. Congress will have an opportunity to read it. Here's what they need to know Freedom and tyranny have always been at war. Justice and oppression are always incompatible. Brutal regimes cannot govern without the consent of the governed. And the people of Iran will never be free so long as this regime is left intact. I opened my remarks this evening by noting that we stand at a crossroads. We must speak with one voice, and we must declare that there is a viable alternative to theocratic rule in Iran. Freedom and democracy are within reach. Now allow me to close this evening with some breaking news. For months, the Iranian regime has been identifying the MEK as responsible for the uprising that began in November 2019. But over the past 72 hours, as the regime has sought to distract attention from their takedown of a civilian airliner and the brutal murder of international citizens, and as the Iranian regime has sought to distract attention from the scrutiny placed on the IRGC after the death of Qasem Soleimani, senior regime officials, including the supreme leader, have been threatening the Albanian government. Shame on them. But make no mistake, the Albanian government stands on the right side of history by protecting the residents of Ashraf 3. Albania knows all too well the evils of dictatorship, and the Albanian government is standing by their commitment in the fight against international terrorism. Ladies and gentlemen, I dedicated my book, our book, to those struggling for freedom in Iran and around the world. And today, in your presence, I rededicate myself to this noble cause. Because when freedom and democracy does come to Iran, and it will, I look forward to visiting all of you and the residents that I met at Ashraf 3 in a free and peaceful and democratic Iran. Thank you all so much.